Thank you again for joining us today. We are a group of folks from Education Elements and from Tripod. They are both Scholarus learning companies. Maybe this is your first time engaging with our organization. Maybe this is your 50th time engaging with us, or we already do some kind of work together. And I know some folks on this call, we already do have some work together that we're doing. We wanted to come together thinking about these last few months of the school year and thinking about how you can consider harnessing your end of year data, whether that is student data, family data, community data, or teacher data for a strong end of the school year, and to set you up to do some really strong planning over the summer so that you can start strong as well in the fall of the school year 23-24. So who's on the call? It is 4 of us today. We are 4 strong. My name is Rani. I work with Education Elements and Tripod. I'm based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and it is really, really great to be on this call with you all today. I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Cait, and then you'll hear from Justo and Natalie for some quick intros before we get started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. It's nice to see you all here. My name is Cait. I work with Tripod and Education Elements under Scholarus. I've been working on Tripod surveys now for about 10 or 11 years, and I'm excited to share some information with you today about how an end-of-year survey can really set you up for success next year.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justo, and I am the Tripod Survey Design Principal. Prior to this role, I was a founding assistant principal at a charter school here in Tampa. And then other than that, I've spent most of my career in public schools as an ELA teacher and as a dean of culture. I'm going to pass it over to Natalie.
Thanks, Justo. Good afternoon, everyone. Natalie Woods. Excited to be with you all here. I have been with Education Elements and the Scholarus Company for coming up on 8 years this May, which is pretty exciting. Prior to my time with the Education Elements, I worked in high schools, both in Missouri and right outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia, and excited to chat more with you today.
Thank you all. It is a pleasure to be hosting a webinar alongside all of you. We just wanted to spend a few minutes at the top of the hour just sharing a little bit about who we are. Again, perhaps this is your first time engaging with us. We are a group of educators and designers and education professionals that really believe in the mantra, schools grow when people grow. We've been working with schools and districts for over 12 years now, been able to interface with over 2,000 schools and districts. 90% of our work comes from repeat clients. I've had the pleasure of working with some of the districts that I work with for the entirety of my time at Elements now. That's been close to 3 years, and really, really glad to see that the vast majority of our work is seen to be very impactful by the folks that we work with. Just to give you a sense of our reach, we have been working since 2010. We've been able to impact close to 1.5 million students, over 1,700 schools, and over 320 districts all across the US. And I want to give you a moment too to take a look at the text that's on your screen, thinking about the ways that we'll discuss today and also all of the other ways that our organization can be your strategic partner. Again, we work with educators, innovators, and designers to solve your organization's biggest challenges. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds, just skim through some of this text that's on your screen, and then we'll move forward with our presentation. So in addition to the work that we'll discuss today, which primarily lives in that 4th bucket, data collection and surveys, all of our services can be encompassed by one of those other 3 buckets that you see on your screen. These are our primary service areas, including instructional design and implementation, organizational strategy, and leadership strategy. But today, as you know, the reason that you're all here today is to talk about data collection and surveys and how to really leverage your community's data to end the school year in a really strong way. Wanted to spend just a little bit talking about Tripod, our suite of Tripod survey instruments that was initially created in 2001 by the co-founder, Dr. Ferguson, who's Ron Ferguson, who's at Harvard University, and our kind of the flagship offering of the Tripod surveys is the 7 Cs survey, which I'm sure some folks on this call, again, based on where you said that you're from, you might be familiar with the 7 Cs survey. You might have administered the 7 Cs survey in your state or in your district or at your school. But since then, the suite of surveys has grown immensely, and we'll be using our time today to talk about a few select options from that suite of surveys as well. One last thing in terms of housekeeping that I wanted to share with you all is just an invitation to engage in the chat in this way that you see on your screen. So if at any point one of us says something that sparks a new idea or an insight for you, I invite you to tag it in the chat with a hashtag AHA, literally type out the hashtag AHA, and then maybe type out the insight that you want to share with the rest of the folks. We are 4 people on your call and we'll be monitoring the chat. So please feel free to include all of your insights, all of your ideas in the chat. We'll make sure to uplift those and share with the whole group. If you have a different opinion that you'd like to share or would like to push back on what was shared by someone else, I invite you to use the hashtag debate. If you need clarification on something that was shared, please use the hashtag question. And if we share something that's really resonating with you or is boosting your ego or is something like, hey, we already do this, this is impactful, we find value in this in our community, at our district, or in our state, then by all means, please toot your own horn, if you will, and use the hashtag #OnFire. So take a moment just to internalize these hashtags and invite you to use the chat to engage with us and with other folks that are on this call. So what are we going to do today? Today, we are going to achieve these 3 objectives: explore the value and impact of administering surveys at the close of this school year, articulate how you can make end-of-year survey data actionable for a strong end, a strong summer of planning, and a strong start for next school year, and then finally share ways to bring these strategies back to your districts and your campuses. What we'd like to do today is we're going to try something a little bit new. My colleague Natalie is going to put in the chat a link that will take you to a document. It will force copy, so you'll get to make your own copy. So the link that Natalie just posted in the chat, if you would click into it, it will prompt you, do you want to make your own copy of this slide? Say yes, and it will make your own copy that you can edit for yourself, or perhaps even bring back to your campus or your district. I'm going to play some soft music for the next 2 minutes, and what I'd like for you to do is on your own copy, I would invite you to read through each of these 5 indicators, and then give yourself a gut check or a self-assessment, whether you're a district leader or a principal or a teacher or a data analyst, in whatever context you're working with, and just score yourself on this using the stoplight protocol. Green, yellow, or red. Green being, hey, we are rock stars at this indicator, at this thing, all the way down to red. Red means, hey, we might need some help with this thing, or maybe we're not doing this thing at all. We want to try this out so that you can kind of get a sense for if what we share a little bit later in our presentation feels like it might be really impactful for you, but also as an opportunity to turn this back to your campus or your district or your state as a gut check or a pulse check tool for your own use when you're thinking about ending the year strong and harnessing your end of year data. So I'm going to play music for about a minute, and I invite you to complete this protocol on your own copies that you're able to make, and we'll come back in a minute. As you are reading through these indicators, if anything, again, sparks your interest or if there's an insight that you want to share, please feel free to drop that in the chat, and one of us will make sure to highlight that and we'll read it out loud as well. Let's take about 30 more seconds. Indicate for yourself whether you're green, a yellow, or a red in each of these indicators. All right, I'm going to bring us back together. If you had a chance to read through all 5 and give yourself a gut check, that's great. If not, definitely hold on to that copy. And we'll also make sure to share the link to this slide in our follow-up email at the end of this webinar as well. So think about those reflections, think about your own context, and I am going to pass it off to Justo to talk a little bit about surveys.
Thank you, Rani. So now that we kind of had a moment to self-reflect, we wanted to kind of ground and norm on the rationale of why do surveys in general. So first, we want to start with why survey teachers, right? For us, number one, teachers are instrumental to the work. They are our frontline workers in education, and they have a unique perspective on how the school operates day to day. And so collecting their feedback can really help with us identifying areas for improvement, but also not just improvement, but as well as potential strengths, which is huge, right? We want to keep working and keep alive what is working. Secondly, another rationale of why to survey teachers is because that we can create a more collaborative and inclusive culture. We are demonstrating that your voice is powerful and it's valued, and so your input is essential to the work that we are doing together. Thirdly, another rationale we want to identify of why to survey teachers is just that we want to make sure that our decisions are grounded in data. Right? We don't want to bet on kids. We want to ensure that we're identifying trends, we're identifying perhaps patterns, and we're making sure that we're able to connect those systems together to really make a transformative change in your school. Another reason is that ultimately we want folks happy. We want our teachers happy. We want our staff happy. And so when we're able to hear their voice and hear from the ground level, from their perspective and their lens, we're able to increase job satisfaction, which ultimately leads to retention. And then lastly, while there are many more reasons of why it's important to survey your teachers, it leads to professional development opportunities. So as you're kind of closing the school year, thinking about what are some of the either roads or goals that I want to establish next year, what are some things I want to improve on, This really helps you gain a perspective of what is authentically needed, what supports can I create and establish to prioritize for the upcoming school year. Not just teachers, right? But if we really think about equitable school and student outcomes, we must consider families. Families are instrumental as well, along with teachers, to this wraparound support and the education of a child. And so first, right, to survey families, we are provided valuable insights into their children's learning experiences, and not just their children's learning experiences, but also their school environment. Secondly, we're also, just like surveying teachers, we're able to identify areas of strength and improvement, right? We can gain a true valuable lens or voice or perspective about what is truly working well within my school, what is something that I may need to either communicate more effectively, improvise or include or innovate and shift. Thirdly, we ultimately want to assess family satisfaction and engagement levels. We know that there may be barriers to that, but if we are able to survey families, we're able to keep our families satisfied, and which can lead to enrollment, persistence, etc. And then lastly, another reason why we want to survey our families is kind of what I mentioned before. It helps us identify what are some of the barriers to family involvement, right? Are my communications only in one language versus another language? Are they in a different medium, right? What are my entry points? How can I make my school more welcoming, more inclusive, and more accessible for all families involved? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually pass it over to Cait, who will guide us into specifically how we can focus on teacher and family surveys.
Great, thanks, Justo. That was great context to set up about why we think it's really important to consider surveying teachers and families. Like Justo said, I'll go into a little bit more detail about our teacher and family survey offerings and why we might consider gathering feedback from these two groups, particularly at this time of year. One thing I will say before I jump in there, something that we always hear from our district partners is that they want to be able to collect student feedback, give students a voice. And of course, getting our start with the student survey, we preach that as well. But I think it's important to call out, like Justo was just saying, it's equally as important to gather feedback from teachers about their experience in the district and families about their unique perspective of having a student in the district. And I think it's important to note that just as data from student surveys can drive improvements for student outcomes, so can data from teacher and family surveys. The actionable data that comes out of teacher and family surveys allows us to better serve the people and support systems that ultimately drive student achievement. All right, so we can dive right into the teacher survey. At Tripod, we have been administering our teacher survey for over 10 years now, and this is really a great survey, especially as an end-of-year survey. It collects data across a variety of different topics, and these are actually topics that districts like yourselves are typically looking at this time of year to make plans to improve upon either over the summer months or for next year. So on these teacher surveys, teachers are given an opportunity to share their feedback, like I said, on a variety of different topics, from leadership to instructional quality or school climate. And we've seen our district partners use this data in a number of different ways. All of the data that comes out of this survey provides the districts with actionable data that can inform school improvement, progress of strategic planning, focus areas, and even contribute to principal evaluations. On this slide here, I just wanted to give you a couple minutes to read over some sample teacher survey items, just to get a sense of how we're posing survey items to teachers as they're taking the survey. As you're looking through these, I'll focus on one item here to sort of showcase the valuable data that can come out of getting feedback from teachers. So if we look at the first item under instructional climate, so it's overall my professional development experiences this year helped me better meet the needs of my students. So getting feedback on this item can help schools and districts focus in on professional development initiatives for next school year. And because our data is able to be disaggregated, we can actually then pinpoint maybe which grades or which schools have really strong PD or maybe have opportunities for growth. So we can really hone in our efforts on where to devote resources or where to devote our improvements over the course of the next year. This is also a really great example of a survey item because even though this is a survey item on a teacher survey, it is very much centered around the needs of the students. So really highlighting here how improving student outcomes is the true purpose of collecting this survey data, regardless of the participant group. Now we can move on to our family engagement survey. So similar to the teacher survey, the family survey does collect data across a variety of different topics as well, and all of which are great to collect at the end of the year, as they can help inform decisions for next school year and summer planning. So families who are participating in our survey are providing feedback on their school climate, communication, school satisfaction, and even their child's stress and anxiety levels at school. We've seen this data be extremely helpful to our district partners when developing communication and family engagement strategies, gathering input for and monitoring strategic planning processes, and also to inform school improvement initiatives. I also just wanted to give you some time here to familiarize yourself with the items on our family survey. So like the teacher survey, all of these items can provide actionable data to schools and districts to hone in on specific focus areas. So if we were going to look at the satisfaction items, so we'll look at how satisfied are you with the way your school supports your child's intellectual growth. Data that comes from this item can truly transform how a school is set up and how it's setting up its internal systems and supports teachers to actually ensure students' intellectual growth is being met. Again, even though this is not a student survey, we're collecting feedback from families, the student experience is centered to the data that we're collecting and will ultimately be used to improve student outcomes. Before we pivot to talking about the actual data that you'll see and that we'll work with, I want to pause here to give us a moment to reflect. So I'd love to see in the chat how we got your gears turning already. How might of what we presented got you to think about your end of year surveys and how it might inform what you're doing for next year or over the summer. So just want to give us a couple minutes to reflect here. We'll come back in about 30 seconds, but any last thoughts you have there, feel free to just drop in the chat. All right, I'll bring us back here. Thank you all for sharing in the chat. It's great to see your thoughts here. And it looks like professional development is definitely something that you're all thinking that end of year surveys can contribute to. So that's great to hear. As more thoughts come up or as we talk about things in the later half of the webinar, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We're really curious to hear how this is, like I said, got your gears turning about how you can use data over the course of the summer. So we'll now take a moment to showcase for you all the data dashboards that are available to our schools and districts post-survey administration. We really do pride ourselves on providing actionable reports and dynamic data dashboards to our district and school partners. These allow for schools and districts, like I said, to make informed decisions about where to focus improvement for upcoming school years. I always say that looking at these sample data dashboards is one of the most compelling pieces of exploring our different survey offerings. You know, after all, the whole reason for administering a survey is to get these data dashboards to work with. So hopefully seeing examples of this right now will help make a compelling case as to why you might want to collect data at the end of the year and start working with it over the course of the summer. So whether it's a teacher or family survey, our data dashboards that we provide to our partners all have the same clear metrics to interpreting data. In all cases, we are providing aggregate district level scores to our district partners. So for each survey, we provide construct scores at the district level, like you see on your screen here. And I just previewed some of those constructs earlier when we were talking about the various surveys. So in this example here, we see that the district is getting a construct score of 3.84 out of 5 for organizational effectiveness. We then show the district each school score underneath. And this allows district administrators to see the full picture of how they're performing as a district and how each school might contribute to that district average. It's a great way to quickly see schools that are performing very strongly in a particular construct and where schools might have some opportunity for growth. Our data dashboards also allow for school leaders to work with their own data directly. So similar to the district view, school leaders also see a score for each construct that is measured on the survey. This data visualization gives schools an opportunity to see their construct score compared to the district average. And it's a great way for school leaders to sort of benchmark how they're doing in any particular area against their larger district. So for this example here, if I was a school administrator looking at this dashboard, I'm looking at my evaluation quality, and I'm seeing that my school is performing slightly below the district average. So if I was going to use this data at the end of the year or over the summer, I could really focus here and make plans for how might I improve my evaluation at my school for my teachers next year, so that if we do the survey again and we collect data, I'm now meeting or exceeding the district average. So how am I going to make improvement to see that score jump? In addition to the construct level scores, district and school leaders are also able to view their data in what we call item response detail. So we show school and district leaders the percentage of participants responding to each response choice on the survey. And I always say that this is my favorite data visualization that we give because it takes a deeper dive than just the construct scores alone and shows the whole picture of a given construct. So on the survey, participants are, when they respond to a survey item, they're indicating their level of agreement. So the more favorable responses are represented on the right, neutral responses in the middle, and unfavorable responses on the left. And if we look at the example on the screen, so these are items in our instructional quality construct. On the previous page, as a district administrator, I might have seen that this construct score was pretty high. And if I was to look at that alone, I would say, okay, great, my school is doing really well in instructional quality, let's move on. But when we look at it from this view, we see that there's so much more information to work with. So for instance, if we're looking at this data here, we can look at the second item on the screen. My principal actively monitors the quality of teaching at this school, and we see that there are a range of responses. Of course, there are a lot of greens or agreement, and that should be celebrated. But when we look at the whole picture and actually look at the responses that are not agreeing, we see that over a quarter of teachers at this school did not agree with that statement. And that's a significant number. That's a significant piece of data to work with. So even though I might have had a high construct score, looking at the item response detail allows us to take a deeper dive and make improvements for specific areas within a construct. One other excellent feature of our data dashboards on the next slide that you'll see, and it is that they're dynamic and they set us apart, I think, because they allow our users to disaggregate by various participant groups. So allowing users to see how different groups are experiencing district and school climate. So on this page, we provide our users with two data visualizations so that they're able to disaggregate on each and make comparisons. So in other words, maybe on the left data visualization, we might disaggregate to families who have only female students in the district. And on the right, we might disaggregate to families with male students and compare how those responses differed. We can do the same thing for teachers. So maybe on the left, we disaggregate to just 7th grade teachers, and on the right, we disaggregate to 8th grade teachers. And again, look at where the difference might exist. Allowing this comparison and disaggregation gives district and school leaders the tools to find specific opportunities for improvement for specific groups in their community. So in this example, if I was a district or school leader and I saw that there were stark differences between the way my 7th grade teachers and 8th grade teachers were experiencing evaluation quality, for example, that is excellent data for me to work with over the summer to make improvements for those specific groups. The last thing I'll showcase around these data dashboards is provide a real life example of how a longtime partner of ours has used their teacher survey data year on year to make improvements. So if you're a district that's administering these surveys year on year, one thing that we are able to provide you is trend data so that you can see how you've improved from administration to administration, which you see on the screen here. And I'll quickly talk about a district partner of ours who uses their teacher survey data in principal evaluation at the end of each year. So of course, the survey is administered each year and the principals then receive their data in April. And when they get their data back, they are tasked with creating an action plan to try to drive improvement for next year. So not only is their teacher evaluation, or sorry, their principal evaluation based on the actual scores that they're getting, but it is based on how they're able to create actionable plans based on the construct scores that they're seeing, the item response detail that they're seeing, and the disaggregation comparisons that they're able to make. And principals actually look at that data and focus in on their top 3 focus areas is what they call them, and create a plan to drive improvement for next year. So they're getting evaluated on the plan as well. And they're also able to showcase to their district administrators how their plan has driven improvement. So actually show them in a particular construct how they've made improvement. And you can see here, the line in blue is the school. And you can see that from year on year, engaging with this process of looking at the data and creating a plan has actually created improvement for the school in organizational effectiveness. So we can see here that this data is actionable. It helps people achieve impact on their schools and districts and ultimately student achievement. And so I think this is just a great example of how impactful this high quality data can be. And I'll pass it back to Justo.
Thanks, Cait. So one of the things we want to also just name, right, is that, yes, it's important to gather data. It's important to survey your teachers, survey your families, but now what, right? So oftentimes we survey, we get data, and then it just kind of lives and dies there, right? So one of the biggest questions in my leadership journey was always, so what, now what? Now what do we do, right? Especially we have a small window of time before next thing you know, you blink and then it's the new school year. And so one of the things that we also provide with not only just a really huge dashboard in our data is that we provide a workshop. So we make this data and this actionable data points valid, and we make them ready for you. So one of the things that we do with our workshop is we give you access to research validated surveys. So our surveys have been studied and validated by research. We provide reliable results. So as Cait has shown, right, one district was able to make an upward trajectory just by using our surveys and creating the actions with the data. Secondly, the purpose of the workshop is that we provide a comprehensive support and expertise. So all of us on the team on this call here provide unique perspectives. We help guide some of the survey administrations. We help a lot of the lift so that we can give you some more capacity and time to spend with your team. And then lastly, one of the things that we also help around with, and the purpose of our workshop, is to really consult around actionable survey data. So we not only help with the administration and the lift of the administration, but we also provide a way in which you can leave with some actionable data to drive school and district improvements. And so on the next slide, I'm going to just showcase and speak highly about a workshop that we have conducted. One of the things that you'll see here with the sample agenda is that we live in this lens of so what, now what? So in this data dive, we kind of will highlight some of the things that you'll notice. So we present a lot of reflective questions because in this reflective coaching, you're able to kind of empower yourself and your team and build your own capacity so that you can drive the change within your school and district. So we'll kind of share some highlights and lowlights of our data. We'll ask and collaborate on this question of, what is the data? What story is the data telling me? What is the story presenting? What is it not telling us? We will be able to spend some time aligning to our school priorities. If we are focused in this goal and this initiative, or if we really want to plan around professional development, what makes true sense? What are the data points that we should really spend and analyze and break apart to drive the change? We also will provide different activities, right? So during this call in the chat, folks have mentioned that they really wanted to walk away with something, to learn something of how to use the data. Well, one activity we do in this workshop is called the 5 whys, which is a simple activity. You ask yourself 5 questions, right? So you start with a problem, a gap, or a barrier, and you just ask yourself 5 questions. So an example would be, my ELA test scores are not up to par. Well, why are they not? Well, I noticed that I only have 3 teachers and 2 other teachers are actually long-term subs. Why is that, right? And so you start to really break down the problem to really drive a true, authentic, and adaptive solution. One of the things that we also will help with this workshop is allow you to build a plan so that you walk away with this workshop with tangible next steps. And not just next steps in general of, okay, what do I do with my team, but thinking through all the systems and all the interpersonal relationships within a school. What do I need to do here? What do I need to build upon here? How do I support? How do I scaffold? How do I build capacity? How do I empower? And so that's just a quick example of what this workshop will look like. And then what I want to just kind of close in is, what are the impacts, right? So we talked about the purpose, we talked about surveying, but what's the impact? What is this going to do for me? Right? I have a month or 2 left before the school closes. What really can this do? Well, one, we know that this can provide an in-depth analysis of school data and can help make significant impact on decision-making, right? So what you're realizing now or closing on can really make a transformational path next school year, right? So you're able to really dive deep in and truly get to the nit and grit of what is truly, do I need to prioritize to drive this change within my school or district? Secondly, you'll be able to improve your ability to interpret and use data effectively, right? I know that there are a lot of people on this call who say, well, you know what, I may struggle with data. I'm not really sure how to use data, or I get overwhelmed with data. I'm not sure what next steps, or how do I look at it? What do I prioritize? Well, this workshop will help you kind of dive and narrow your focus. So that way you can carry this tool and lens with you beyond just the workshop. Thirdly, one of the impacts that we are proud about too is that it identifies areas of improvement and it prioritizes action steps, right? As I mentioned before, looking at data in a dashboard can be extremely overwhelming, but we help guide alongside with your work and your lens to really think through what is something that I can make change now, what is something that I can really prioritize, what is something that I may need to revisit on. And then lastly, the impact of attending our workshop is that we develop a clear plan of action. So once again, just really highlighting that it's not just about the so what, it's about the now what, but also in a sustainable, effective way to ultimately lead to equitable student outcomes. And so I'm going to pass this over to Natalie to close us out.
Thanks, Justo. So want to wrap up today with sharing ways that you can bring this back to your school or district. So want to talk through a lot of this is just a recap of what has been shared, but pulling it all together. So there are ways that we can help you. Like Justo was just sharing, how do we take these surveys and turn it into something actionable? So by working with us, you have an opportunity to have those research validated surveys. We also provide comprehensive support and expertise across our team. So as Cait was sharing with the survey, It's not just giving a survey, it's looking at the data, it's unpacking the data, it's making informed decisions and choices based on the data. What is that data telling you? And then also for that data workshop, having an opportunity to unpack that data and make some plans this summer to set yourselves up for a really successful school year next year. So if you were to decide to move forward on this offering that we've been talking about today, we would encourage you to choose one. So choose a teacher survey or choose the family survey. Maybe you've recently surveyed your families, and so it makes more sense to prioritize surveying your teachers. Or maybe you have over-surveyed your teachers in the past month or two, but you haven't heard from your families in a while. And so this would be a great time to focus in on that. The constructs are listed here between the teacher survey and the family engagement survey, as well as some suggestions of how you could take information from these surveys and put them into action based on what other districts have done that we've worked with. Normally, a survey window would be open for about 2 weeks. Given that it's mid to late April right now, we know schools are going to be wrapping up quite soon. So for the teacher survey, we suggest to keep that open for 1 week. We would encourage you, if you'd selected the teacher survey, to identify, do you have a PD meeting or a faculty meeting or something coming up where you have the audience together and you could give them 5 or 10 minutes during that meeting to respond to it. Will increase your response rates tremendously. And for the family engagement survey, we would suggest to keep it open for 2 weeks so that you can really reach out to all your families, give them some time to respond, send them some reminders so that you can hear from as many people as possible. Then what we would encourage you to do is pick a date. So when do you want to host this data workshop that Justo was just talking through? We could do this in person or virtual. We love being in person with people. We think it's a great opportunity to look at the data together, open up these data dashboards, have all these conversations, and then put things into actionable plans before you leave. Given that it is also April, we know that getting a survey set up, getting that sent out, getting the results in, and scheduling something before the end of the year can be tough. We'd encourage you to get that survey out before school ends. We see the data workshop as something that could happen after your students have left the building. Might be something that your school leaders participate in, that district leaders participate in, some teacher reps, depending on who you want to pull into that. And we, on purpose, design this as a half day. We know that the end of the year and getting into summer is very busy. And so we think a half day would be perfect amount of time to work through this. But again, we could do it virtual too if getting together in person just does not make sense. So I wanted to share with you a proposed timeline of what all of this could look like. Our team supports by setting up, understanding what are you trying to get out of this survey? Why did you choose this group to have a survey? What kind of information is top of mind? Really set some bigger picture project goals in the beginning. We would then make sure that you have all the information you need to have the survey set up so that you can send it to all the right people. Open the survey, keep the survey open for 1 or 2 weeks, depending on what makes the most sense, and then have some time to get those responses in so that people can start getting ready to access the results. Then we would move into getting ready for that data workshop. So what we would do is we would host a call with a couple project leads to say, this is what we're thinking for the workshop. What do you think? What Justo just shared is a sample agenda. And so we could run through some samples with you, see what speaks to you, what you're most excited about. We'll customize and craft the right agenda that matches those early on project needs that you've identified. We'll bring that back to a call with you so that you really understand the agenda, you're excited about it, you've been able to make adjustments and tweaks and make it your own. And then we would host that half day in person or virtual. And then we would close out. What we would do at the end is we would take all the things that we saw and heard in the survey. In the moment when we were looking through the data together, we're going to be listening. What are people talking about? What is sticking out to them? We're going to capture those next steps and those things that people are excited to take action on. And we would share that back in an executive summary readout through a call as well. So the two big pieces here, I'm really honing in on that survey and then also the data workshop, but wanted you to show their support before and after each of those so that you are getting ready and getting the right information that you want, and it sets you up for a successful summer and school year. Some things that we will share in a follow-up email with you afterwards. So you'll get a copy of these slides from today. You'll have access to a recording of this webinar, and then also a summary, this one-pager, which per usual, our one-pager became a two-pager, but it's a front and back document for you that talks about all the things that we shared today. So maybe there's someone from your district or school team that you want them to have access to the same information. This one pager would be a great resource to share with them. If you are interested in talking more about the survey offering and the data workshop combo deal, you could email us back to the email that you get it, or this email address is on here as well. And we're also including this For Good Measure data culture guide. We know that people really want some resources at their fingertips, so that will come in your inbox as well as we close out. And so in closing, we're going to drop in a quick closing survey. We love to get feedback. It helps us to grow, to learn, to make sure that what we're doing is super helpful for you. So Cait has just dropped that into the chat. When you take a couple minutes and respond to that, but also we'll stick around. We are here for questions. So feel free to drop the either through Q&A, or you can drop it through chat. And I'm going to actually drop it in. Let's see. There. Okay. I think we're coming through now. It may have gone to just hosts and panelists. So let's make sure it goes to everyone, but we'll make sure that we drop that closing survey in. It'll give us a chance to, again, gather some feedback. We hope today was super helpful for you. We are really excited about end of school year for you. We know it can be a really exciting time and a really busy time. So hope you find some space to take some time for yourself, enjoy these last couple months of the school year, and have a lovely summer. And we hope to hear from you soon. And we'll stay around for questions, respond to that closing survey, and let us know what you need.